for 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Arturo Uribe. I'm ready to be your county commissioner for District 1. I've been working here in Doña County since 1993 with skateboarders and our youth, trying to, bring skateboard parks and places for our youth to, convene. Been working with our former commissioner, Oscar Vasquez Butler, worked hard with bringing in the Colonias initiative to address the many needs of our communities when it comes to infrastructure. I want to be your county commissioner. I'm a strong voice. I believe I have the skill set and the respect of our elected officials to bring positive change. If you would like to talk to me more, I can talk to you about the tangible things that we've done in our community in the last 15 years. So vote Uribe. My name is Arturo Uribe, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Ms. Reyes.
I'm Antoinette Reyes, and I want to be your next county commissioner for District 1. I am a 15th generation New Mexican and a proud NMSU alumni. I was born in Silver City to 2 teenage parents. Being the eldest in a low-income family, I helped my mom in any way that I could. I helped raise my younger siblings. And today I now have 2 children of my own. I understand the needs of families that live paycheck to paycheck. I want to make sure that my children and all kids in Doña County grow up in a safe community with opportunities. I have a history of advocating and pushing for environmental and economic sustainability. I've always fought for those without a voice through my work with nonprofits and in the education sector and as an activist. I work directly with children, the elderly, disabled individuals, recovering addicts, and animals. I'm running for the same reason that drew me to teaching in the past. I want to touch as many lives as I can for the better, and with your support, we can improve Doña County for all residents. I want to encourage economic development while protecting the environment. I'm passionate about sustainable agriculture and providing better services to our vulnerable populations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Owens.
Peter, before I speak, can I ask the audience a question?
Yes, but they're not compelled to answer.
Just out of curiosity, how many people in the audience live in Commissioner District 1? Quite a lot. The rest of you can leave. My name is Lynn Allen, and I'm your former county clerk. I spent most of my life working in government or with government. 22 years as a lawyer and lobbyist for the J.C. Penney Company. Served on a state board of regents for the University of Colorado. Was chief deputy secretary of state in Colorado. Been a P&Z zoning commissioner here in Doña County. I've been your election supervisor, and I've been your twice elected county clerk. It's a privilege to be a public servant. I made a positive difference in the life.
That's a priority due to the fact that it's all about improving the quality of life for the citizens and the people of Doña County. Thank you.
The first question is a little bit lengthy. If you need it repeated, don't hesitate to ask. What will you do to prevent multi-million-dollar judgments because of discrimination, separation of church and state, detention center, excessive force, and other lawsuits? So basically, how are you going to prevent lawsuits? And we'll start with Mr. Alvarez.
Okay, as is well known, if you go back to 2006, when you had a group of individuals that were inmates at the Doña County Detention Center, they filed a $5 million lawsuit for illegal strip searches and also other improper conduct by the employees of the detention center. That was a $5 million lawsuit. You go to 2007 when the United States Department of Justice actually had to go into a federal court decree with the county because of 5 female Hispanics had sustained allegations of discrimination against the county. I think what it's all about is failed leadership. If you keep on putting the same people over and over every 4 years, you're going to keep on getting the same results. Shannon Reynolds said, bring back sanity to the county commission. So in other words, if we keep on doing the same things and we keep on putting the same people with their own personal and political agendas in those positions,
please,
that's what we're going to get. Thank you.
Mr. Owens.
Well, in the previous panel of sheriffs, there was a lot of talk about training, and of course it's true. Training is important. But in my 11 years with the county, I have noticed a real change in personnel policy. The good old boy system began to fade, and I could see it fading. And at the same time, I could see the HR department imposing more objective criteria on, with regard to issues involving discrimination and matters such as that. I think we've come a long way. You just have to keep it up.
I believe that, again, from the sheriff's race, I really like something that Mr. Roybal said, zero tolerance. And that, to me, the policies are in place. It's obvious the policies are there. We just need to enforce them. And the minute somebody comes to a supervisor and says, this has happened to me, we need to listen, because it's not just about our constituents. It's about the people that work at the county and taking care and protecting them as well.
I believe that we need to have an external reporting center or contact person to process complaints from staff, for whether it's sexual harassment, discrimination, and so forth. I also believe that we need to make sure that the county auditor stays funded and makes sure that our money is being spent efficiently and isn't being misused or misappropriated. I think that we need to conduct an assessment to make sure that our employees are receiving the pay and benefits that they deserve to help increase employee morale across the county and to improve the rate that the employees are turned over. Happy employees tend to work better and tend to treat our residents and our community with the attention that they deserve. Thank you.
Mr. Uribe.
I'd fire the department head staff, the guy that's in charge. I think these lawsuits, when you sit there and you see these department heads not being held accountable, I think that's an issue. I think the department heads, if we're having issues and we got human resources and they're not holding...
I'm going to jump right to some of the questions from the audience. What is your position if right to work would come before the county commission? Mr. Ellens.
I would be adamantly opposed to any such resolution brought before the county commission. I do not think it is appropriate for employees to have the right to opt out from paying a portion of their salary towards union dues and negotiations. Nobody is entitled to that kind of free ride, especially when the outcome benefits them.
Mr. Jimenez.
I would also oppose any measure of right to work. I've always hated that term because right to work is anything but the right to work. It's a horrible thing that's come up in New Mexico. I believe a couple of counties have already accepted it. If it came before Doña County and for District 1, I would definitely oppose any right to work measure that would come before me.
Ms. Reyes.
I adamantly oppose right-to-work legislation. I believe that it undermines the effectiveness and the ability for unions to fight for their employees. Thank you.
Mr. Uribe.
I come from a strong tradition of union workers from Silver City, and in my heart, I support what the unions have done for us in our past, and I still think there's much that they could do for us in our future. But just to sit there and disregard what the unions and us coming together to fight for our rights as workers, I don't agree with that right to work. But I do think that we should allow individuals on a case-by-case basis. It's a difficult situation, but I don't think it's a good thing to have mandatory union dues. I do think that that's an issue, but I do agree with what the unions have been doing for us and what they have paved the way for us as workers. I mean, we got 8-hour work days, we've got wages. I mean, right now we need to stop.
Mr. Alvarez.
I would oppose any effort in Doña County to bring right to work ordinances or legislation. I believe that pro-union is a pro-democratic core value. I have been a lifelong Democrat. I'm not going to be changing parties, or I'm not going to be, changing my views on core democratic values. Right to work is pro-union. I believe in the unions. The unions have brought and created safe and healthy work environments throughout our country. If it wasn't for the unions to set a reasonable living wage and set safe and healthy conditions for our workers in this country, after tragedy after tragedy that happened ever since the 1800s, the 1920s, especially on the East Coast and in New York, where they had tragedies where workers were injured in accidents. So I'm against right to work.
The next question, how does transit fit in your economic planning? We'll begin with Mr. Jimenez.
We were asked this question earlier at the Sun News. I remember as a kid, my grandma would get on the bus to come visit her mom, my great-grandma here in town. It was the only way she had. She didn't drive. She tried to drive once and almost ran over the chickens. And, yeah, true story. And so we finally, when it went away, it was like an end of an era for us. We're like, well, what happened to the buses? Well, they couldn't afford them anymore. So they bring them back, and because they don't work in the first couple of years, now everybody wants to get rid of them. We need to give it a shot. We need to continue to give it a shot. Give it a chance, because these buses are working. People are getting on these buses. Every year there's more and more riders. So instead of just saying, no, let's just do away and scrap the whole thing, people have worked very hard on this effort. How about you take a bus ride and see how wonderful those buses actually are?
Ms. Reyes.
I firmly support transit. I believe that's important for economic development in the sense that people need to be able to, especially from the rural areas, they need to be able to come into town, whether it's for work or whether it's to shop at some of the stores that we have here that aren't available in some of the rural areas. I live in San Miguel. I come to town probably twice a week, and even then with the current bus schedule, it's starting to get better. People are able to have more access. They've played with some of the different routes, and now their ridership has increased dramatically. Some of the times that I've ridden the buses, there are students that ride the bus that are in high school and college who simply ride them all day just for Wi-Fi access. I think that it's important. I think that it's important that we work to continue this service. It's not just a product for us to monetize. It's something that people need and they rely on. Thank you.
Mr. Uribe.
I like what you said about people riding the transit just to get Wi-Fi. Transportation is a need or want that people have, but I don't think the way it's being operated right now, I think it's flawed. We could do better. It runs Monday through Friday, it doesn't run on the weekends. I think that's a mistake. I think we don't do east to west routes that will link our communities like Mesquite to San Miguel, to La Mesa, to Bajo. Those little routes could be, instead of going back and forth, they could be changed. I support it, but I also think that if we consider transportation to be an infrastructure need, I think broadband and the money in that would benefit more of the people in my community and our communities to access to the internet. And I think more people would be using it. So as an infrastructure need, as they call transportation, I think it's there, but I would look to trying to work with the South Central Department of Transportation to make sure we get better routes.
I strongly believe and support the transit system. However, I think that we need a re-evaluation and reassessment of possibly different routes and possibly different stops. I have seen personally about 30 of these buses, and I have never seen more than 3 passengers in these buses. So I think that it needs to be reevaluated and reassessed and looked at maybe on different hubs that we could put, like in the Anthony area, in the La Mesa area, at the community centers, stops at the community centers, and improve that infrastructure to possibly increase the ridership and make it to fit the needs of the community, the needs of the people that are using the buses. Thank you.
Mr. Elms.
The issue is very much what has just been said in terms of routing, but that's really not the argument that's been presented against the transit system as we know it today. It's always been a question of money. Well, actually, I believe the county last forked over approximately $312,000, which is 1/4% of the total annual budget. You know, the role of government is to make things better for people. And transit, public transit, is notorious for not being self-supporting. And we should not expect it to be self-supporting. These days, even the New York City subway system is in trouble. I used to ride the subway in New York when it was a nickel, incidentally. It's about $1.50 now and it's still losing money. So we can't address and frame the issue in terms of dollars. We have to address it and frame it in terms of a vital lifeline for people from north to south and especially in the colonies.
Shifting gears, do you support Operation Stone Garden, Ms. Reyes?
So as for Stone Garden, I do believe that funding is important when it comes to resources such as technology that our officers don't normally receive, and it's also good for overtime pay. But I believe that if it were to come up again, that it's really important that we get a firm written commitment from the Sheriff's Office as to what roles in enforcing immigration law that they are going to have. One item that came up in the recent op-ed that was very concerning to me was the 60-some sting operations that it said that our office participated on the properties of businesses and other residential areas. To me, that is alarming, and I would like to know more details about that. At the presentation at the county commission, it didn't seem like we had much hard data and figures, and if we aren't able to better keep track of that system, and if we aren't able to make sure that the details are very clear on what we will and will not have a role in participating in, I would not accept it unless it has major changes from this year until next. Thank you.
Mr. Uribe.
Yes, I would support Stone Garden. I think when we listen to the issues that are out there with our families and our mixed communities, with families that are here documented and undocumented, those are issues that those families have to deal with. But the issue of public safety and what that grant provides for our communities and the money that comes in, I think it's good for our sheriff's department to have that. I understand the emotion and people what they're saying about how it's being criticized for supporting or having the support from Border Patrol, but we're on a border region and we do need to have those mutual aid agreements. But the funding and the grant itself, I think it's been around for a long time. But right now, I think it's just an issue because of the administration and the climate that we're in nationally.
Mr. Alvarez.
In 1993, when I was transferred here to Las Cruces within the Mexico State Police, I participated and I worked Stone Garden for 10 years. Right now, I would vote to suspend the county's involvement in Stone Garden. It needs to be reevaluated, it needs to be looked at, and it needs to be hard data to the facts that local law enforcement has no business involving themselves in immigration laws. as far as life-threatening situations, as far as federal law enforcement that need assistance in different areas, if it's an emergency, then we have a duty to respond to that. But as far as any type of involvement in undocumented immigrants, zero. Thank you.
Mr. Ellens.
Had I been a member of the commission on Tuesday, I would have voted to discontinue the program. We have a national immigration issue, a very, very bad national immigration issue, which is only being enhanced by leadership in Washington. I use the word leadership very lightly. It flies in the face of community policing, for crying out loud. The appearance is the reality, whether it's real or not. It appears that we are trying to assist the federal government in expelling hardworking people who immigrated to this country for no better reason than a better life. People are not going to come forward to law enforcement. If there's a domestic violence situation, they're not going to call the sheriff because they don't know what the sheriff's going to do when he gets there. They're not going to report all kinds of things that go on because they will not trust our authorities.
Mr. Jimenez.
I gotta admit that I didn't know too much about the Stone Garden monies and how they were spent and what was required. And even just today, I just got down to brass tacks and started reading up on it and speaking to a future constituent, hopefully outside. If we're going to accept that money, we have to accept the rules that come with it. And so, do I think we should take the money? I agree with with Antoinette that if we're going to accept that money, that we have to have a provision in there with the feds that says we are not going to question people about their immigration status. We are not going to assist Border Patrol in doing roundups. Everybody knows my work with the immigrants. I stand clear on that. These people are here to make better lives for themselves, and they'll have their day in court. We need to leave them alone. And again, if we have to assist Border Patrol or ICE in any way, shape, or form, then we need to give up that Stone Garden money and seek funding elsewhere.